Hello, and welcome to this eSchool Media webcast. My name's Andrew Barber. I'm a senior contributing editor here at eSchool Media, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation. It's titled Simplifying Asset Management and Empowering IT Pros, and it's sponsored by SchoolDude, which is part of Dude Solutions. Now, before I introduce our speakers, I want to take just a couple of moments to highlight some aspects of the console that you're looking at right now. First, today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. In a couple of days, we'll send you an email that will contain a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from that same email. And secondly, please ask questions. Don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. I hope we'll have 15 minutes or so at the end when our speakers can answer your questions. We also have a chat function which can be launched via the brown group chat icon down at the bottom of your screen. Now, please use chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eSchool Media team with any technical issues or other concerns that you may have, but please do not use the chat function to ask our panelists questions. They simply don't have time during their presentations to monitor the chat. So again, if you have a question for them, please use the Q&A panel instead. Now, with that out of the way, let me formally introduce our speakers. Chris DeJunis has been with SchoolDude for 2 years and is an applications engineer. He demonstrates the value of SchoolDude solutions and shows how the product works to IT and facilities professionals in education. His experience and knowledge help clients save money, time, and resources to run their operations and IT departments more efficiently. Now, our other speaker, Fielding Harlow, will be joining the webinar during the Q&A portion of right at the end of the webinar. And Fielding has been with Dude Solutions for 4 years, working with district IT departments to help them implement the company's IT service management solutions. He's now on the emerging technologies team and manages a group of experts in IT and building automation. Fielding helped develop a new suite of IT solutions for schools to transform the way IT departments manage their assets, mobile devices, licensing, and help desk ticketing. Now, over the next 45 minutes or so, this is what we expect to cover. First, Chris will share some key statistics about today's EdTech environment. And after that, he's going to examine ways institutions can run their IT departments more effectively and manage their IT resources better. And Chris will also give us some background on SchoolDude solutions available to help IT departments get a handle on their services. And then, as I said before, we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end for questions, which is when we'll be joined by Fielding. So welcome, Chris and Fielding. It's a real pleasure to have you here today. Chris, why don't you get us started?
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate you giving us some time here today to discuss the ever-changing technology landscape that we do see in the educational IT market and the IT departments there. Like you mentioned, getting started here, just to reiterate, my name is Chris DeJunis, one of the application specialists here at SchoolDude. So most days that could be anything from being the tour guide, showing prospects and existing clients around our solutions, to going on site and working directly with districts and getting these solutions up and running, or traveling to numerous different events that we host around the country, also guest speak at. So there's a good chance if you attend a lot of the events like COSIN, ISTE, some of the other ones out there, there's a good chance that we have an opportunity to meet and speak. So anytime you see that SchoolDude booth at any events you may be attending, please feel free to swing by. Myself and Fielding oftentimes are there, and we'd love the opportunity to meet with you. We're going to keep this very straightforward for you here today. I know Andrew just provided a brief agenda there for you. But what we're going to be doing here, we're going to dive into some statistics to get us started here. We actually have a very interesting set of numbers that are from the 2015 IDC Government Insight Study, so dealing specifically with technology in the classrooms, both higher ed and K through 12. So we'll look at those numbers as we get started here. We'll use those numbers to frame what we're then going to talk about a little further down the line. We'll talk about how we can streamline our departments, both on the help desk side of things, but also in how we're managing our assets, automating some of the workflow with how we're deploying things and how we're actually tracking those assets once we do have those distributed out through our organizations. So like Andrew mentioned, if you do have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use that Q&A option that we have available. Fielding will be also answering those along with me as well. So get those in there, and we're going to get off and running here. So just some of those statistics to get us off and started, and I do also want to mention before we get too far in depth here, typically times with webcasts you may see a little bit of a delay or lag as I'm moving through the slides. I'm going to do my best to account for that, but if you notice that it's not catching up and I'm moving forward, please feel free to let the team know in that chat window and they'll relay that to me. All right, so let's look at a little bit of these numbers here before we get too far down the road. So this is something I do not need to lecture our attendees here on today. Technology in the classroom, this is a trend we've been seeing coming down the pipe here for a while. I'm in my mid-30s, and I know I was seeing technology being introduced into the classroom in new ways, even when I was in middle, high, and then post-secondary education there. So this is something that we're going to continue seeing. So let's look at some numbers related to it here. That first one there, pretty much all teachers agree technology is playing a significant role in the classroom. Again, this is something we know that's true and only going to be continue to be more accurate as more and more technology becomes introduced. Almost 3/4 of us are now saying that open resources, these digital resources we're becoming familiar with, they're using them more than textbooks. More efficient, more affordable, a lot easier to get the newer generation of students to adopt this type of technology. Some numbers that I actually have will show you that that is the case. 83% of us are using technology to deliver the entire class at one time, this group instruction. I know at some of our meetings that we do here within my department at SchoolDude, we take this same approach. I know some of you have familiarity with the apps where you can put a question up on the projector, or if you're streaming your computer screen there, in which you can ask everybody a question, and right there from the mobile device, you can put your answers, you'll see how people score, you'll see what the majority of people think. I mean, we're doing that here in our environment now, so obviously that's something that we're going to be seeing more and more of in the classroom. And then another one that everybody's familiar with, communicating with parents using technology. That's a given at this point, right? How many people are still relying on the students to bring home grades or any sort of note that you need to make sure gets into those parents' hands, right? Much better ways for us to do this, much better ways for us to deliver this communication with parents. All right, so with this in mind, let's get a little more specific now. These numbers clearly flesh out that technology is here to stay, and in fact, it's going to be increasing even more at a faster rate here over the next few years. All right, so since we are seeing more of this technologies into the classroom, what's that mean? Well, it means we're spending more money to get it in there. It's just not magically appearing. So whether we're buying this at the district level, maybe we're utilizing grants. With higher ed, there's even other options for how we can get this technology into our classrooms and into our facilities. But what it really comes down to is money. So if we look at these numbers here, I mean, $6.6 billion with a B projected in IT spending in higher education. That's not surprising at all. If you look at that second one there, $4.7 billion projected in K through 12. I was a little surprised by that. I thought it would be lagging behind a little bit more, as we've typically seen in the trends when you compare higher ed and K through 12. But that's not the case. You can see we're spending plenty of money even in the K through 12 realm. And one of the reasons that I see this occurring is because with this additional spend, not only are you going to get the resources to streamline and centralize, but you're also getting more data as a result. That's something else we're going to be talking about. It's going to be a theme as we move through today's presentation after we get through these numbers here. Laptops alone, $3.7 billion across all institutions. So we can see we are primarily still relying on those laptops, a lot of desktops still in play, but that next number is catching up quickly, tablets and mobile. This is something I get asked about on almost a daily basis as I'm doing my webcast for our existing clients or any of the prospects that are looking at coming on board with the solution to help manage technology there. So that's something we're just going to continue to see. I would be surprised if that number is not closer to I don't know, we could probably say $1 billion to $1.5 billion within the next year with the trends we're seeing. All right, so moving on a bit here. This is another big one. BYOD, right? We're all familiar with that term now. Bring your own device. No longer are students relying on just the assets being distributed by the schools. In fact, we can bring this out to not just the student realm, right? How many of us have faculty members that insist on trying to bring that laptop from home? They've got great resources. They need to use it as part of the lesson plan today, right? So not only students, but teachers are also bringing their own devices into class. What's that mean for us IT professionals who are responsible for managing and tracking all of these assets? But not just that, the security, the network, making sure the network's up and running, making sure everybody's able to access what they want from their device. All right, so these numbers show, look at that, almost 80% of elementary school students are regularly using a tablet for schoolwork. Now look how that number declines a bit as we look at the next ones. All right, so what's that tell us? These younger students, this next generation of students I keep referring to, they're already so ingrained with technology. They're so used to this, they don't even remember a time when they were at school and they weren't using things like tablets. It's a given that they've been using laptops their entire career in education. That number dwindles a little bit as you get older with these existing students, but let's face it, high school age students, although it says only 50% are using a tablet for school, they're very well versed in other technology there. It just means they haven't had the tablets put in their hands to use yet. All right, and so let's continue with that theme. If we're bringing this technology into the classrooms, we're spending more to get it there. What does that mean for us IT professionals? Again, we have to support everything that's going on here. All right, if almost 60% of schools are using technology in every classroom every day, somebody out there has to make sure that that network's up and running. Who is it that's making sure that we have enough access points to be able to accurately cover the networking that we're going to need? We have to be able to cover all that square footage now, because when we initially rolled out that network, we thought we were good with each classroom. What did we find out over time? Students tend not to congregate in the classroom, so if you're letting them bring their own devices, you're letting them onto a guest network, you better be able to make sure that you can provide them with that bandwidth and that connectivity wherever they are. Students congregate in stairwells, they congregate in the hallways, out on the recess area, in the gymnasium, those areas we didn't think about at first. So these are things we have to take into account as we continue to see these trends coming in there. We've got 60% that are using laptops and desktops in the classroom every day. Some people may be surprised that number is not higher, but remember, we're bringing those other devices into the classroom now. Those mobile devices like smartphones and tablets are making up a large chunk of that that's not being represented with that 60%. And then you can see, obviously, nearly everybody is requiring regular access to wireless and broadband across the majority of their campus, even more so with higher ed, right? You better have connectivity everywhere, because students are always going to find a place to do something creative, and you need to be able to make sure you can support that. And then 71% of us need a department dedicated solely to technology in classrooms. I would expect that number to be over 90% within the next year or two. Gone are the days where you can just find somebody on staff who's technology savvy and just add a hat for them to wear managing the IT infrastructure here, right? Nearly everybody needs a dedicated team, whether it's that army of one with some part-time resources or that dedicated department who has individual teams or roles specific for supporting all of the technology we see coming in. So just to recap from those numbers, what can we glean from this information? Increased spend means increased scrutiny, right? Those days are over where we're just getting those resources in. We really did go through almost what you could call a golden age, that golden era of IT in the classroom, where we've had this money flowing in from grants in other areas, other funding sources. We've got all this technology in the classroom. We're starting to do new and exciting things with it. But now we're actually going to have to be responsible for the results. We're going to have to be compliant. We're going to have to make sure that we're spending this money equitably. We're deploying our assets in an equitable way, making sure everybody has even access to all of those different devices out there. Compliance on the testing side of things is just as important. Monitor size is one we've gotten a lot of feedback about. With our newest solution, Insight, where you're able to see the assets out there on your network, we can now show people the monitors that are plugged into your devices. This is big for standardized and end-of-the-year testing. You better make sure your monitor sizes are in compliance, and even more importantly, your monitors better be meeting the minimum resolution requirements as well. Otherwise, you may have some issues there. And then security risks, obviously. It's hard to go a day without hearing about new online security risk or a breach or a leak of some sort that's happened, right? How are we supposed to be able to track what's going on with our different operating systems that we have, different settings that we've got throughout our network, especially when we're letting people bring their own devices on top of the district-owned devices that we have out there? So with all of this in mind, with all of these numbers that we've just looked at, we've laid the groundwork, we get it, technology's in the classroom. Let's look at some tips that we've come up with from some of the studies that we've done, some of the research that we have to show you how we can better manage these IT resources. So that'll be the theme here over the next few minutes. And remember, please utilize that question and answer area if you do have any questions as we continue on here. All right, so a few tips for you as far as running the IT department goes and where we've seen that efficiency gains can really help streamline and centralize a lot of these processes here. So one of the first is obviously being able to deliver a clear snapshot of our entire infrastructure. Like we just talked about, we have to be accountable now for all of the money and resources that flow into our IT departments. We need to be able at any given time to be accountable for what we actually have out there. Whether we're using those traditional funding sources or if we're getting creative with some of the grants that we have, it's our responsibility at any given time, whether it's for an audit or to hammer down some problem you're having there. We got to know what's out there. All right, so if we can centralize the management of our IT assets, not only that, but our services, our help desks, however you refer to it nowadays, ticketing system, help desk, service center, we've heard it all. But what we've found is if you can get a single platform for this, for not only tracking and monitoring your hardware, mobile devices, software, networking assets, but also the tickets themselves that may have to do with these assets, right? How many times are we really going to work on a certain asset before we decide, hey, we should think about replacing this? All right, next up, simplifying policy enforcement and compliance. This is a new area for SchoolDude as well, and it's becoming bigger and bigger with managing these IT departments, especially once you start allowing those students and teachers as well to bring those own devices. If you're going to allow them onto your network, whether it's the guest network or the primary network, really don't you want to have some control over what it is that they can do on that network? After all, that is one of your resources, almost like currency, right? What are you going to let them do with your network bandwidth? Do you want to give them access to certain types of applications or certain app stores that may give them access to pre-approved downloads? How do you want their devices to be able to interact on your network? Can those devices even access the network if they don't have that specific profile that you want them to have? These are all the type of questions that you're going to have to deal with when you're setting up your different policies and compliance. So make sure you have a good policy in place when you come up with all of these different variables that you're going to inevitably face. All right, so as far as improving the efficiency and effectiveness of your IT team goes, we touched on this just briefly a second ago as it relates to help desks. All right, so if you can automate some of these more time-consuming tasks, project templates, for example. If you have to do the same tasks every time you have a new hire or you have an employee leave, well, shouldn't you be able to group those in a way that it's more efficient for your team to knock that out instead of having to create a new ticket each and every time that you have to do a project? If you can streamline the communication not only around these projects, but also your service requests, those ticket requests as they come in, what we have found is that really cuts down on those hallway muggings we're all too familiar with, right? Starts off innocent enough. Somebody's asking about the printer problem they're having, so they grab you in the hallway. Next thing you know, you spent 30 minutes talking to them about what they did with their children this past weekend. And while that's a great conversation, we probably have 15 other things we need to go do. Now we're stuck in the hallway. So streamline your communication. Open up that communication. What we've found is if you provide those users who make your requests with just a little bit of information, you're going to keep them in the loop. They're going to cut down on those hallway muggings. So what we've found is if you can provide them with info like the status of that request, who's going to be taking care of that request, maybe an easy way to communicate with the technician that's going to be taking care of that so they can let them know, hey, this would be a good time to come into the classroom, or if there's additional information they forgot to include, they can easily reach out to them through your system there. So having something like that in place to not only automate, but also streamline and centralize that communication process. All right, and then reporting. Obviously, that's the name of the game today. We were just at Coast, and Fielding and myself were both there, and it was hard to go to a course or go to any sort of lecture or speak to anybody in the decision-making type of role without data coming up. That's just the reality of the world we live in right now. People don't want to make decisions by themselves. Nobody wants to be on the hook. Nobody wants to be accountable for that big decision that really may change the direction that your organization's going in, whether it's good or bad. So what a lot of people are doing is falling back and relying on that data. With a automated and centralized type of help desk process, you're going to be able to capture data that you can't do manually. How many times has Mrs. Fussalot made that request into your system? Well, if you're using a spreadsheet or if you're just tracking this manually, maybe you're using email, you're going to have to go through and manually count all those emails you received from her and hope you didn't delete one along the way. Well, with a system like ours that we have to offer here at SchoolDude, an automated help desk solution, you can actually run a report and you can see how many times Mr. or Mrs. Fussalot has had that printer issue. You can say, hey, you know what? You've asked me 10 times in the past month to set up the projector for your after-school club. Why don't I show you how to set up that projector? That's going to put more time back in everybody's day, and it's also going to make that person more independent and more likely to actually learn new things that they can do, learn new ways they can use that technology in the classroom if they're more comfortable using it. So that's just one way we can use these reports. There's a ton, just a wealth of information that can be gleaned from a system like our help desk and then used to make real-world decisions. All right, so with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about the help desk first. All right, so what can we do to really streamline these help desk processes? Help desk is nothing new, nothing groundbreaking here. I'm going to guess almost everybody that's in attendance today actually has experience using either a SchoolDude help desk or one of the many other ones that's out there. So let's talk about ways we can improve our help desk performance a little bit and why it matters to go this route. One of the first ones that we touched on a bit there previously, communication. The more you can communicate with these end users, the more they're going to understand what's going on. You're going to close that perception gap we're all too familiar with, right? Especially in IT. We can do so much behind the scenes without anybody ever actually seeing us working on their machine necessarily, that a lot of times that perception gap can be quite large. People are always wondering what it is we're doing. The more we communicate with them, the more visibility for our technicians. Also, the more at peace of mind the person who made that request is going to be, since they know what's going on. They know what's going on with their work. The next piece of that is going to be that historical analysis, being able to better understand what your users' needs are, as well as what your team's skills are. If you can look at a user's service history, if you have that right at your fingertips, that example we used for right there for the projector. If you know that a few times a week they're going to ask you to set that up, well, then you can be proactive and say, hey, you know what? I think we have a better approach. We're going to train you up a little bit. Next thing you know, you're going to be taking care of this yourself. Again, you're just putting time back in everybody's day here. Another big one as far as analysis is going to be tracking assets, right? The assignment history. Now, I know a lot of times, a lot of help desks may not have the ability for you to tie an asset to a ticket. With the SchoolDude with the SchoolDude help desk, you have the ability to store your assets in the help desk so you can associate help desk work to the asset that's having the problem. Again, we asked this at the beginning. How many times are you really going to repair an asset when you can think about replacing it, especially with the prices we're seeing for things like Chromebooks, some of those new Microsoft machines that are coming out? So being able to track not only the assignment history, but also being able to tie those incidents to it. You may have an asset when you're looking at it on paper, they're saying, hey, you know, we've spent $2,000 repairing this asset in just the past year alone. Do we really want to think about Continuing to repair that? Or maybe is it time to replace it? Well, if you have a system that allows you to see each and every ticket that has been registered to that machine over time, well then you know, hey, actually, we don't want to replace this machine. Mrs. Nettleton spilled coffee on it last year. All we had to do was replace the motherboard. That's the only expense related to it. Turns out it's not a lemon. It's not a series of tiny problems that keep on adding up. This machine's actually good to go for a while. That's the level of information we're talking about within your help desk here. We're trying to move past just that simple ticket resolution type of program. Accountability. I mean, this is the name of the game, like we talked about at the beginning. Now that that money and that resources have flown in, we have to be accountable. And not just you as the director. You obviously have to be accountable for how these assets are being deployed out, what they're being used for, are we getting our money's worth for them? But also accountability for the people that are making these requests. How many times have you had somebody come to you, maybe even, my favorite is when a parent comes to you and says, you know what, my students told me that they've submitted 10 requests for you to fix their Chromebook and nothing's happened, they're still not able to access the internet. Well, you know what's great? Is when you can go into the system, pull up that particular person's name and show them, hey, I actually have no requests from this particular student. We've had numerous people use the system for that to be able to justify what they're doing and also protect your own back, right? You have to be able to cover yourself in a lot of these, and that's where the accountability really comes into play. So when you hear accountability, don't just think about how you're having to be accountable, but also think about how you can use this to really hold others accountable as well. And then on the technician side of things, the workload, being able to see what it is they're doing. Do you have certain technicians that are accomplishing more than others? You may have specialists on staff and you didn't know it. If you can see that certain technicians are doing only software work and they're doing a really good job of it, well then you may want to think about moving them to a more specialized type role. Use automated routing within your help desk so all software problems are going to be automatically routed to them. A lot of different ways that you can actually automate these processes to help out your technicians and then ultimately keep them accountable for the work that they're doing because you'll be able to run reports on everything that they've closed out. Same's true for customer service. Many of us are responsible for matching up with whatever our SLA is. We have to complete this work in less than a day or whatever you've signed on to that your department's going to actually accomplish. With these reports we're able to generate, you're going to be able to match up your customer service with your SLA there very easily. All right, so moving on here a little bit, we're going to talk about the network itself and what all we have out there within our network. When we talk about automated asset management, what we're talking about is being able to figure out what's out there without having to deploy something out to every machine. Kind of a dated way to look at it with these agent-based approaches, right? If you have to deploy something out to every machine on the network, could be a problem. Every machine's not the same. Every machine's probably not running the same operating system, and if they are, different versions as well. So a lot of things to take into account here. One of the big ones that we hear about is compliance. 88.6, it says here, 88.6% of technology professionals are concerned about software compliance. I'm here to tell you it should probably be about 100% of you. We've heard some absolute horror stories from clients who have been out of compliance. Typically it happens with Microsoft, right? Everybody's best friend when you're buying something from them. They want to give you servers. They want to give you Active Directory. They really want to be your best friend to get the hooks in, right? Deals that are just too good to pass up. We have multiple clients that have not remained in compliance with Microsoft. It's not a very pleasant experience for them when Microsoft decides to come audit. All right, so if you can stay in compliance and avoid those audits and not get that $100,000, $200,000 bill on the way out of the door after they come and do that audit, that's going to help you and your district a lot. So being able to confirm that you are on board with the proper software licensing and being able to proactively monitor what it is that you're using and what the usage is like is going to be a big way to save a lot of headache down the line. We have some additional resources. Please feel free and let us know at the end. We can share with you some stories and also point you in the direction of some other districts and higher education institutions that have fallen out of compliance and some of the results of that. Anything from ridiculous fines to even civil litigation that can come into play. All right, and there's accountability, again, not just on the help desk side of things, but also on our network side as far as our assets are concerned. Exactly what we were talking about on the accountability side of things with the audits. If you know your audits are coming, you might as well be prepared for them. And not just on the Microsoft audit side of things. I work with clients on a daily basis. They've deployed assets out all over their district. At any given time, they may have somebody from their board come in to do an audit. Usually they give them a little bit of notice there at the end of the year, but I've spoken with people who have literally had to show a spreadsheet or show a list of assets that are purchased with a certain funding source. Somebody on the board says, all right, that one right there, points at a name and says, show me where it is. Well, if you don't have a system to track where that is, you may spend the next hour walking in and out of dozens, if not hundreds of classrooms trying to find where that asset is located. Why not use a system? Invest in a system that can do that for you. You're going to look like a pro, but it's also going to put, again, time back in everybody's day here. And then security, name of the game, right? We keep hearing about security both on the help desk side of things as well as on the network side of things. Being able to monitor that hardware like we were talking about. Same with the software. Most solutions that you would work with nowadays, they may lock into just the hardware. You need to purchase something additional for the software. I highly recommend looking for something that can show you both your hardware as well as your software that you have out there on your network. Because you're going to have to be accountable for both, and there's security vulnerabilities within both. And that's another big one, too. 75% of technology professionals have encountered unauthorized software installs. We run into this all the time. It's pretty funny here. Within our corporate environment, nobody's supposed to have admin rights on their machines. I'm friends with a couple of the guys in our IT department, and it never fails. They continuously find unauthorized software installs that they have no idea how somebody was able to get that onto the machine when they've locked down the rights. It happens. You'd be surprised. So being able to monitor that hardware so you can see any unauthorized installations and then isolate it to the machine is going to be a big help for you down the road. All right, so with some of those numbers that we started off with there, along with some of the tips about streamlining and monitoring the devices on the network in mind, for the last few minutes here, we're going to segue just a bit into the SchoolDude Nation and what it is that we do and what it is that we have to offer. Again, continue to ask those questions that you may have. We'll address those here at the end. And we can also continue this discussion if you would like to schedule some time later on with us once we wrap it up here. All right, so just a bit about us here. Here at SchoolDude, we actually maintain the world's largest educational operations database. So you can see the numbers from 2014 alone. In fact, we have these from 2015 already. I need to update this. But in 2015, we had about 16 million work orders come through our system. That's going to be maintenance and operations specific work orders related to facilities. Had about 3 million IT incidents come through our system. About 6.5 million events were booked at facilities using our solutions as well, and then also utility expenses managed. The reason I bring this up isn't to pat myself on the back, to show you how many clients are using this. The reason I bring this up is to show you the level of data that we're collecting. Here at SchoolDude, we've been doing this for over 15 years. Cloud software wasn't even a thing back then. Nobody knew what to call us. This is actually something that we kind of grew into. We're like, hey, we're already here. This is great. But the point is, 15 years of data we have at our fingertips. We don't have to pay people to do studies for us. We do our own studies by studying our data. We de-identify all of our data, and we actually provide it back to our users in the form of what we call business intelligence dashboards, KPIs, if you will, key performance indicators. So we can show you how you're performing. We can show you how you stack up to other users that are in a similar market as yourselves. We're not going to compare higher ed to a small private school. We're going to compare you to people that are in the same type of situation. So we can provide you with all sorts of metrics so you have that high-level look. You can take these numbers to your board and say, hey, do you know how many tickets per student we should be doing a year? Anybody out there know? It's about 1. Our numbers show that you should be doing about 1 IT ticket per student per year. You can see how you're performing compared to others in that similar situation. So things like that are where our data really comes in handy. How efficient is your process? We have numbers that can show you. ITIL standards say about 60% of your IT incidents should be closed out in about 1 day or less. How are you doing on that? What percent of your IT tickets are closed out in 1 day? Well, with our system, you don't even have to run a report. We've got that dashboard right there for you at all times. And then moving along here, you can see it's more than just a funny name. Here at SchoolDude, we only work with educators. Public K through 12, higher education, private and independent schools, obviously. That's all we work with. That's who we understand. All of our solutions have already been customized with educators in mind. All right, and just to give you a little idea of what we actually have in our technology suite, this is something Andrew had actually mentioned at the beginning when he was discussing myself and Fielding. Fielding has been key in helping us develop where our IT suite is going. So what we have to offer now, a lot of you are probably already familiar with, it's called Incident. That's our IT help desk. We probably have some existing users on the line with us now. The newest piece of that is Insight. It's actually a replacement for, if anybody has any experience with ITAM previously, Insight is the replacement. We've rebuilt our IT asset discovery solution from the ground up, and we've built it specifically to be an agentless network scan. We've been doing the technology management side of things here for a little bit, and the feedback we have from our clients was basically, hey, if we can go without the agent-based approach, we would really appreciate that because it gets bulky. It gets hard to manage to keep track of the different agents you need with the different operating systems and having to deploy those out and hoping it all goes well. So Insight's been rebuilt. I would highly encourage you to take a look if you have not seen it since it has been re-released. And then coming soon, we're going to be developing this very quickly over the next few months and years. Mobile device management is on the agenda here for this summer. We can speak more about that later if you are interested in additional details. There will be true management capabilities there. So what we were talking about earlier with that bring your own device and managing those tablets and mobile devices that we're seeing flooding into the classrooms, we're going to give you the ability to actually lock down those environments. If you want to be able to enlist devices or enroll devices into those supervised environments with that custom profile to restrict what they can do, that's the type of thing we're going to be offering with mobile device management. And then continuing on with metering and licensing, we're going to build out the licensing functionality so you can better track what sort of licensing that you're staying in compliance with. What licensing are you using? What metrics are you using? And then the metering for how frequently that software is actually being used. This year, should I think about purchasing a new set of licenses, or maybe I can recycle some of these licenses based on limited use in the past? So if anybody does want any additional information about anything related to our Technologies Management Suite, TechnologyEssentials there, that's going to be your contact information. I'd obviously be more than happy to talk about it there at the end if anybody has any additional questions. But here, as we're wrapping it up, I basically just have a few slides that will talk about what each one of these different pieces has to offer. So I can go through those if y'all would like. Andrew, I'll also defer to you if you have any questions that have come through. I know it's been about 40 minutes so far, so I want to make sure we have time to answer those before I get too deep into the weeds or anything like that.
Yeah, Chris, why don't you keep going? And I think we're going to have plenty of time. There's still 22 minutes left. So why don't you walk us through these remaining slides, and we'll come back to the Q&A and bring Fielding in as well at that point.
Perfect. All right. Appreciate it, Andrew. So what we're going to look at here next is we're just going to kind of break these off into each one of the pieces of that suite, and we'll talk a little bit about what they have to offer there and what it's helping accomplish with those numbers that we were just talking about previously. So the whole idea behind our Technology Essentials suite is to really match the goals and the challenges that we've been talking about through the past 40 minutes. So being able to simplify the deployment process of those assets, right? You want to be able to track what's going on with those assets. Once you've deployed them out to the locations, you want to be able to track what's going on with those machines. If you're assigning them out to owners, maybe a block of machines to owners at individual locations, you obviously want to know what's going on with those. Being able to configure a lot of this so you can access more granular information is really what we're all about. Being able to get as much data drilled down to an individual level as possible. And then one of the other ones that we haven't talked too much about yet is going to be the improved ability to budget and plan. If we can show you forecasting based on budget information that you already have in the system, that's going to help you out, especially your finance department, in figuring out where you're going to be pulling this funding from. If you're doing barcode scanning, or if you're tracking what funding source was used to purchase assets another way, maybe in a spreadsheet, you're going to be able to look back at those funding sources and run reports on them, because that's a field that we capture right there on the page. So if you want to see where a block of assets that were used with, that were purchased with E-rate have been deployed to, well, that's something we're going to be able to show you. All right, so as far as Insight goes, Insight is the newer piece I was referring to. This is going to be that agentless technology, or that agentless network scan to pick up those IP addresses. What's going to happen here is it will detect any IP addresses that you have out on the network as far as what it is we can discover. Once it actually detects and discovers that IP address, it's going to inventory what that IP address is. So you not only know what's out there, but you have a list there of everything that that's on your network. This can absolutely help reduce time in the field, not only for your staff, but also figuring out any potential risk that you have out there. If you can automate the discovery process for a lot of this, you're going to save a ton of time. I work with clients on a regular basis who, until this point, have been spending a week, 2, 3, even months over the summer with a barcode scanner and a cart, pushing it in and out of hundreds of classrooms, if not thousands of classrooms sometimes, and scanning the barcode on every one of those assets. I completely understand why people do that. I've been in that type of situation before and performed that type of audit. And I'm telling you, if you can go with a system to scan the network that can pull in that same level of information, it's something you need to think about. It's going to significantly cut down on those time and cost for your team having to go and perform that really just mundane work. Something else that we haven't talked too much about related to Insight is going to be warranty statuses. I know a lot of people out there right now, you create your warranties manually in your software, then you associate the warranty to the device that it belongs to. With Insight, you can automate that warranty discovery process. We actually integrate with leading manufacturers' APIs, so people like Dell, Lenovo, HP, Toshiba, and Apple. We integrate with their manufacturer API. So if your machines have active warranties from those manufacturers, we can pull that information right into our system. No longer do you have to manually create that warranty and associate it to every single device if we can pull it for you. Just a little bit of information here. We're not going to jump into a demo or anything like that, but I do want to give you just a little bit of an idea of what this looks like as far as Insight goes, since I know most everybody here has not had the opportunity to see this before. This is that replacement to ITAM we were talking about at the beginning there. You can see in our left navigation bar, you're going to have the ability to track hardware and software. We're on the hardware tab in this current screenshot, and you can see we've highlighted our workstations tab. This system has the ability for you to track Windows, Linux, Mac, and Chromebook all under one roof. You do not have to have Casper for one. You do not have to have SCCM for something else, Dell Case for another one. You can use this for that snapshot. Remember, that's what we're trying to accomplish here. For those audits or just for any sort of accountability's sake, being able to track all of the assets that you have out there. So in that left navigation bar there, you'll see we can also track servers, both physical and virtual on the server and the workstation side of things. Monitors, we can show you what monitors you have plugged into devices across the campus. We can show you printers, both network printers as well as local printers. How many people here have that constant battle where they're trying to keep their teachers and administrators from bringing in their own personal printers from home? We hear that all the time, and now we can actually show you which machines have a personal printer plugged into them. Your primary networking gear would also live here. Things like access points, base stations, routers, switches. We've got that information captured here. Each one of the different headers I just talked about has their own set of pre-built dashboards, just like you see in the middle of the page there. Those dashboards are interactive, so if you want to drill down or switch it to a chart instead of a table, we can do any of that for you. Moving over to the software side of things here, just another screenshot for you. You can see we've moved to the software tab at the top. And now we're actually looking at the assess vulnerability capability built into the system here. So you'll see that red bar. It's located under the defense status. What Insight does is it actually assigns a defense status score to all of the machines that you've scanned. It's going to take into account, does this machine have an active firewall? Does it have active antivirus or anti-spy? If so, what's the status of it? What operating system version am I on? And do I have any outstanding patches that have not been updated? It factors all of that into that defense status score. This is a great feature if you do have that teacher we talked about earlier that insists on bringing her own laptop or his own laptop from home for the lesson plan. You can perform an on-demand scan of just that one individual machine, and they'll be able to see right away, hey, is this a vulnerability or not to my network? All right, moving it along there. On the next one that we have, this one's actually showing you a cross-section of all of the different products that you have installed. Now we can take this a step further. Right now the dashboard view is just showing you the top 20 software products that you have installed on your workstations. If we expand this out into a detailed list view, we will show you each and every piece of software that's installed on the machines across your network. We can either normalize it into a friendly name for you to keep it nice and simple. We can even give you that raw data. If you want those ISOs, if you want those digital product IDs so you can drill down and see the individual unique software ID for every single piece of software that you have installed, we can give you that level of detail and clarity. On the incident side of things, incident is the help desk, all right? So this would be the system that you would utilize if you are looking for that ticketing system. We've got a centralized portal to streamline and centralize that request process for your users. Each one of your technicians in your department would have their own individual dashboard that they can manage. You can automate the ticketing process, so the routing of these tickets. You can also set up queues. If you have queues for certain locations or certain problem types, if you have certain teams that handle certain issues, you could set up a queue-based system for the help desk as well. Communication flows throughout the help desk. Once your user submits a request, they receive email notification anytime there's a status change all the way through completion there. They also have the ability to reach out to the technician that's completing the work, and the technician can also reach back out to the requester if they need some as well. Automated surveys built in, so if you do want to make sure you're hitting your SLAs and you do need to reach out for feedback, we have the ability to automate and randomize that survey process for you as well. All right, so these next ones here, we're going to wrap it up shortly. These are the ones that we were talking about coming soon. So this is how the solution will be evolving over the next few months. The MDM piece that we touched on there, this is how we're going to track mobile devices. It will require the installation of a profile onto that device. That's just how it works in the MDM world. That's how we're going to be able to track it. Think about it this way. If you don't put a profile on the device and you want to track it, it's going to be really hard if somebody switches that over to cellular. I don't really know anybody who has a way to scan the cellular network and pick up devices outside of the government right now. So it does require that policy to be installed, pretty standard across the MDM world. This is really going to help you manage those different policies for your devices and also the enrollment of the devices itself. And then the remaining pieces that we touched on there, just to provide you with a little more detail. Metering. This is going to also include the ability for you to track usage of cloud-based software. Software as a service. SchoolDude, for example, more and more popular in the educational world, using these software as a service options. You need to be able to track how many of those you're using, any sort of seats as well. You're going to be able to track hardware utilization with this system and also help out on those efficiency gains. How much is this software being utilized? Is it being underutilized? And maybe we should think about recycling these. And then on the licensing side of things there, we're going to build this out. We do have some licensing capability already in the system, like I touched on, but we're going to be building these out for enterprise licensed software across multiple different manufacturers or software providers, if you will. We want to make sure that the installations and licensing are in compliance and remain in compliance with whatever you've purchased there. So this is where we'll get into reallocating those licenses that are being unused, if we can recycle those and cut down on our costs and improve our efficiency there. All right, so that's pretty much everything that I had planned to run through here today. We do still have a few more minutes, so I will turn it back over to Andrew and see what kind of questions have popped up, and Fielding and I will do our best to answer those.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for a really fascinating discussion about some of the issues that schools face in trying to manage their assets and some of the solutions that you put forward here. Very, very interesting. We've still got about 10 minutes left, so let's get to some of the questions that we have. And the first one I just wanted to ask, you did mention the experience of someone having to go into every classroom and use a bar scanner and scan every piece of equipment in the classroom, maybe throughout an entire district or campus. One of the members of the audience is understand if you're not going to do that, how does it work that you're obtaining the information on each device? What happens and how do you do it? Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that. Now, that's a great question. And what we do is actually have you install one Windows service on the device there. That Windows service, it's called a PAD, just stands for Proxy Adapter and Discovery. It's very lightweight. In fact, we have a technical document that talks about what sort of network overhead you can expect and what type of minimum requirements you need for the PAD. Very lightweight, but it's actually the brains of the whole operation. Once you install that PAD, you'll configure any credentials that are necessary for the machines that you're trying to scan. So if you need to make sure to get your admin credentials in there, those credentials are stored on the pad within your network. They're encrypted and stored there. They're never passed over to servers, so it maintains that security. Once you've got that installed and configured, then you'll initiate the types of scans you want to run depending on what assets you're looking for. Once it gathers that information, remember, it discovers it. As it's discovering it, it will inventory what it is, and then it passes those results right back on over to Insight, where you can view them and make any sort of changes like to ownership or to the location and so forth.
Okay. Exactly.
Terrific.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks so much.
This is Fielding. I just wanted to add a little bit on top of what Chris said. It is a service, and you can install more than one service depending on the layout of your organization. We will work with you to understand and identify the primary sites where this service can reside based on your WAN connections and robustness of interconnectivity between sites. I just wanted to add that to the discussion.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Fielding, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Why don't we stick with you for another question, which is, can you talk about the broadband bandwidth needed, the minimum needed to accommodate your services, to provide the kind of network view? What does a school, district, or higher education institution have to make this all work?
Yeah, great question. And like Chris mentioned, we will have a full spec sheet that you guys can request from us, and we'll be happy to deliver that to anybody that requests it. So elaborating on that, the service that resides within your network, as it reaches out to discover each asset, you're looking at 1.1 megabits per second upon initial discovery. Clients do have the ability to put granular control access in there to allow them to mitigate that overhead after the initial discovery. So you're looking at roughly 1.1 megabytes for initial asset discovery and then less upon each subsequent scan. Outside of that, the throughput from your actual service to your cloud-based server instance is about 64 kilobits a second. So, a lot of it depends largely on the robustness of the client's network, but we try to minimize that impact as much as possible. And on top of that, we put a lot of granular control mechanisms throughout the product that allow you to really slice and dice very numerous aspects to fit your organization and its infrastructure.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you. We do have some questions which are related on asset management and how your system discovers assets and what kinds of assets it can track. Fielding, do you want to handle that as well? How does it discover assets, and what types of assets can it track?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the service itself works through a series of probes and processes. It starts off with an Nmap scan. If Nmap is blocked on your network, we can facilitate that scan with ICMP. But essentially, we run a smart scan across the network to identify network-attached assets. Based on what Nmap returns, as far as that device profile, we then initiate a series of device-specific probes to glean more information off that asset. For example, if Nmap comes back and identifies this as a Windows device, we're going to execute WMI protocols to glean the information off a Windows asset. If it comes back as an OS X or Linux, we're going to initiate SSH calls, etc. So we have probes and processes that are specific to the types of devices being captured, and the system works intelligently to identify those upon initial network discovery and then execute the appropriate data gathering probes after that. Expounding upon that a little further, the types of devices that we can bring in, elaborating on what Chris mentioned, we do full workstations, Windows, OS X, Linux, and Chromebooks as well. With Chromebooks, we actually sync with the Google Management API to bring that information in. We're actually one of the few vendors that's able to do that at the moment, so we are very excited about that. We do a full bevy of servers, so your Windows servers, your OS X, your AIX, your Solaris, your HPs, anything along those lines we'll be able to capture. We also do full virtualization, so along those lines of ESX, Hyper-V, Red Hat. We also do physical to virtual mapping along those lines within the virtualization. We also do printers. So not only can we capture network printers, but we can capture those localized printers. We know teachers like to bring in their own printers and then ask IT departments to manage and facilitate troubleshooting those. So this will show you those locally attached printers. We also capture monitor information. As far as network equipment, we do VoIP phones, routers, switches, wireless base stations, and we're constantly looking at how to expand these service calls to capture more devices. So as an example, we know smart technology, smart boards, smart panels are pretty prevalent within the environments that we cater to, and we are looking at essentially extending our capabilities to absorb their proprietary network. It's called a MIB file that allows us to bring in that information as something more than just a network attached device.
Okay, great. Now, I think I'm not. You were pushing me to the edges of my technical capabilities there, but I think I heard you say, and just confirm for me, can inventory that is not on a school's network be added or tracked in the technology management platform?
Yes, sir.
I think you just answered.
Yeah. And Andrew, that's a great question, and I apologize for not including that. Yes, guys, we do have full import capabilities or manual input capabilities, and a full subsection for those devices that we classify as non-discoverable. We know as the Internet of Things is becoming more prevalent, more and more items are becoming IP addressable, but until that point, you guys are still left with managing those digital cameras, flatbed scanners, things of those nature, and we do have a full section to incorporate the importing of those devices and management and searching of those devices all within one system.
Okay, terrific. All right. Well, we probably have time for maybe one more question. And I just wanted to come back to licensing. And it was, I know that this is something that is under development right now and it's still being rolled out. But there are so many different types of licensing structures out there. Is the solution that you're working on going to be, have the flexibility to accommodate what seems to be like, just a panoply of various licensing options out there? Does it cover all of that?
Initially, the first offering is going to cover what we've identified, and forgive me, I have to check with the program manager to get the specifics, but the licensing metrics that are most prevalent within the environments that we serve are going to be included within that initial offering. The beauty of this entire platform is our ability to enhance it on an agile development schedule, meaning every 4 to 6 weeks where we're looking at pushing out enhancements and updates, that sort of thing. So we want to get it out into the marketplace and then grow it based on the needs and the feedback from our clients. So to answer that question succinctly, we do hope to have a fully baked, all-encompassing license module, but we are going to hit the market with the top licensing elements that we have run into and then add more as we grow.
Okay, I understand. All right, terrific. Well, thank you. I'm afraid that is all the time that we have left today. If any of you asked a question that we were unable to get to today, someone from the SchoolDude team will follow up to get you some answers. But as we wrap up, I really want to thank Chris DeJunas and Fielding Harlow for excellent presentations. And Fielding, thank you for joining us for the Q&A at the end there. And I'd also like to thank SchoolDude for its support today. One final reminder, we will be sending out that email to everyone who attended when the recording of the webinar is ready. So that's it for today. Thank you so much, and this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.